Hi, I'm Sarah Jane.
Hello, and I'm Fleur.
And I'm Ellie.
We're Hand to Health, three art psychotherapists.
And welcome to our podcast. This is the Spirit of Creative Entanglement.
In today's episode, where we dive into the heart of healing, not just of the body and mind, but of the spirit also. We are joined by a guest, Shelwin Croucher, whose practice blends the groundedness of hairdressing with the gentle, intuitive power of Reiki. Hi, Shelwin.
Hi, nice to meet you all.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And I believe Shelwin has bought an object to kind of get us started, as we do on our podcast. I've also done a little bit of diving into what Reiki really means, which I know we just had this conversation a little bit, but maybe it'd be lovely for people to actually hear. And apparently it means spirituality, guided life force energy. So I wondered whether you could help us a little bit with that. And if your object flows into that, then fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So the object that I've chosen to bring to this today is a statue, and she is called Kuan Yin, and she embodies the virtue of compassion. So one of the precepts or the guidance that we follow in Reiki is to be compassionate to others and yourself. So one of the things that we follow daily. So she embodies the virtue of compassion. She is considered a bodhisattva. So she has chosen to not reach nirvana, which is total enlightenment. She's chosen to stay on this plane to help others on their spiritual journey. So I thought that was a great sort of thing to bring to today, because that is, the essence of what I do. It's kind of working towards my own spiritual journey, but also being here to help others as well, in whatever capacity that is, within my Reiki practice or within the salon in my hairdressing practice.
Yeah, beautiful.
It reminds me, Shelwin, of walking alongside.
Yeah, absolutely.
A phrase that we know we often use, but that came to mind when I was just listening to what you were saying.
Yeah, and whenever I'm doing meditations or self-healing, she's always one of the visions that comes to me to kind of guide me through those practice. So she's always on my altar. So I have a little altar at home when I'm doing meditation and spiritual practice work. So she's always sat there, sort of guiding me and supporting me through those things. So yeah, she's come to me quite a lot when I've been doing self-healing. So it just feels right that she's here now to support me through this. Reiki, the original system of Reiki, was never about treating others. It was always about self-development and your spiritual awakening, and building yourself up spiritually to be able to walk through this life, with compassion, with love.
Right.
So the actual Reiki practitioner level became a Western treatment. It evolved into that, quite a few years later. So the original Japanese system of Reiki was always about working on yourself, your own spiritual development, so that you could. And then when it became a practitioner level, when it got taken to the Western world, you had to be able to have done that first to be able to pass on that healing to others. But yeah, it's all about that compassion for yourself, that empathy for yourself, that really building up yourself so that you can function in this life.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I'm sorry, Shelwyn, I've got to say that I really have very little knowledge, and I'm intrigued by um, that little bit of the story. I'm wondering if you can tell us more about the history and the root of the word and where this kind of comes from, and your journey as well.
Yeah, sure. So Reiki means universal wisdom. It's the higher self, the divine, source, if you want to call it that. And ki is energy, so life force energy. Ki kind of comes from lots of other things. So you've got qigong, so it can be qi rather than ki. You've got so there's lots of ways that qi could be described. And qi is the energy, so it's that breath, it's what we breathe in every day. So the founder of Reiki was called Mikao Usui. He was born in Japan. He started his healing journey in the 1920s, so it was a very long time ago. But he kind of was working towards spiritual enlightenment. He was trying to find something to enlighten his soul, and he was trying all these different things, and nothing was really working for him. So he was meeting up with lots of Buddhas and spiritual guides. And one day he was told to go up into the mountains and do a 21-day fast to get to the edge of death, to then find his spiritual awakening. So he went up into the mountain, did 21 days of fasting, and he was then shown Reiki energy. He was shown how he should go back to Japan and start trying to heal other people. So he kind of came back from this and then started teaching students to bring that self-awareness, that spiritual guidance, that spiritual awakening. And then he only ever taught about 100 students. So it was very much a practice, it was every day. Every day you have to work on yourself. Every day you do the meditations. Every day you do your self-healing to become awakened to it, to get that enlightenment. And then when the war was happening, the generals in the war had heard of Mikao Usui, heard that he was this amazing healer, and because they didn't have enough medics, they asked him to come along and teach them Reiki so that they could then give Reiki to their soldiers. And that's when this kind of giving Reiki to other people as a treatment became the start of the practitioner level. So the person that took on that then started his own school. He was then teaching his students to heal others. And then it got taken to the Western world, where because of Pearl Harbor, we couldn't really show, they didn't want to teach a Japanese healing technique. It wouldn't have been accepted in a Western world after Pearl Harbor and the war. So it then changed to a more Western friendly healing technique. So it was a bit more of a Christian, they kind of brought more Christian values in, as God was the healer and all of, sort of bringing those values in, so that it was much more easy for a Western world to digest. And that's when these schools then started to be able to practice on others, to become a practitioner, to open up your own clinics and work with others and use it as a treatment-based modality. So yeah, it's evolved quite a lot, from Mikao Usui also was Buddhist in his sort of the way that he lived his life. And you go right back to the 9th century, and a lot of the sort of, they call them precepts. So these are the sort of the guidance that we live by daily to make sure that we are working towards this spiritual enlightenment. You go back to the 9th century, and these Buddhist rules, if you like, these Buddhist ways of living were kind of where he took that from. So they've evolved all the way from the 9th century right through to today, and they have never changed. They are so strong that that's how it's always been taught. People have tried to sort of diversify and sort of go off the path of what that means, but it's always comes back to those core beliefs and those core precepts of how we should work through our healing modality. Very, very interesting. It's, people try and change something like that. That's quite easy to change and make it your own. But ultimately, those core core beliefs have stayed the same all the way through that time.
Inner truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I am, I'm hearing so many similarities, I think, in terms of the way of working, and that sort of that awareness is really important. Like you're saying, you're doing your own spiritual sort of journey as well. So you're really aware of yourself when you're alongside somebody else. And
Yeah.
that is, as a therapist, that's something that we are, which is really important to our work. So we are becoming much more in a different way, the way that we become aware. But that awareness is really important, so that when we are with somebody in the room or outside or wherever we might be with that person, that we have an understanding of that energy in terms of what is our energy and what's our client's energy, and how is there not having an understanding of, is there something that we can keep it separate, or is it merging, and I'm just wondering, for you, Shelwin, how do you notice that when you're with a client, that that maybe that some of your energy might be coming up as well as their energy, and how you find a way to sort of compartmentalize, if you like, so that there isn't that too much of a symbiotic kind of relationship going on?
Yeah, that's a really valid question, actually, because when you're starting your Reiki journey, you're attuned to the Reiki energy. So you become the vessel or the conduit for healing. So you're not actually using any of your energy. And that's a really important point to make, is that you're not giving your energy and you're not taking that person's energy. What you're doing is you're becoming a conduit for that universal life force energy. You're drawing upon that energy to be able to give that person a boost, if you like, or to give them the energy that they need for their healing. I mean, there are times that you will naturally be, merging your energy into theirs because you're trying to feel what's going on, and they will naturally want to be pushing their energy into you. But that's when your intuition, your intent for the healing has to come through, and you have to, protect yourself as well. Because you don't want to be sharing energy. That's not what healing is all about. It's about giving people the energy, the universal life force energy, to help with their own. So when I'm working in the salon, for example, I've always been a very empathic person, which I'll go into in a bit from where my journey started. But when a client comes into the salon, I mean, energy, when we think of energy, it's like it's sensing energy, even when we don't have a word for it, or we can't explain it, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you walk into a room and you suddenly go, oh, that does not feel good. And it's something that you can't really explain. It's just that intuition, and we all have it. What I want to say also is that we all have the ability to be healers. It's not something that you're special. It's not sort of designed for people that are special or magical. We all have the ability to be Reiki healers. It's just being connected to that energy and having the intention to give healing. So yeah, when I'm working in the salon, and a client comes in, immediately I can go, oh, you're not having a good day, are you? And then when they sit down in the chair, and I think being in front of a mirror as well is a very opening experience, because that client is sat there looking at themselves, and they're being reflected back. So whatever energy they've got that day, they're projecting into that mirror. They're looking at themselves, they're talking to themselves, essentially. They're not really looking at me. And that energy then gets reflected back to them. So, I'm sort of trying to channel that energy through me. I'm trying to be intuitive. I'm feeling their energy. And it just creates this really lovely, safe space. But when I opened the salon, I was getting quite ill, actually. I was constantly tired. I felt exhausted. I was using I was using alcohol and going out to kind of numb me, I guess, because there was so much going on all of the time.
Mm.
So one day when I was in the salon, I just had a particularly stressful day, and people talk to me about their deepest, darkest things. So it does leave an imprint on you through the day. You're kind of taking on, and by the end of the day, you don't know who you are anymore. And I'm not trained therapist. I didn't really know how to discuss that kind of thing with them. It was more just letting them talk. And then one day a client came into the salon and I was doing her hair and she said, "Wow, you know that you've got a healing ability, right?" I'm like, "Okay, what's that?" And she explained Reiki to me and said, "You really need to come to me because you're making yourself ill. You're not protecting yourself. You're taking on a lot of this energy. You need to learn how to separate that and be able to work effectively, because again, with energy, if something is blocked within the body, then energy can't flow properly. It's like a river. If a blockage happens in a river and it gets stuck, the water becomes stagnant, and then problems occur. You start getting ill.
Mm.
And that was what was happening with me. I was taking on all of this energy and it was just becoming stuck in my body because I couldn't process it. And then I was becoming tired, exhausted, ill, cranky, drinking too much. It was just not a good place to be. So this person came in. I then went to her for start of my training, and I trained in the Western style Reiki, so the evolution of where Reiki went to.
Mm.
And the difference in myself was immediate. Just having that Reiki myself
Mm.
taught me how to release those feelings.
Mm.
So I think it was overwhelmingly brilliant, because for the first time in my life, I actually felt like I belonged somewhere as well. And I think a lot of people that go into Reiki are kind of floating around the world, and they're very empathic, they're very creative people, and they just don't, there's something that they're missing. So once they go into this healing space, they find their tribe and they feel this love and compassion around them, and they just feel like they're home. And that's exactly how I felt. And that was where my spiritual journey really started. So I was about 30 at the time. And it takes a long time for your awakening or your spiritual journey. You're always learning, you're always working with all these different energies. So it takes a long time. And I'm now 44 and I've got to that level where I'm really confident in my own space and in my own body. And now when I'm working with clients, I can separate myself from that because I've got the tools now to be able to do that. So, at the end of the day, like I say, I still take on some of that stuff, but I'll go home and I'll sit in meditation, or I will do some self-healing so that I can not get rid of, but I can just process what's happened, and I can kind of give that back to source. That's how I kind of work with that.
It's how you ground yourself, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. And knowing about grounding, so you learn all of that when you're working with Reiki. So in the mornings before I start my work, I will sit so with Reiki, we have these precepts, like I was talking about before, that we work. That's kind of like our Bible, if you like. So the Reiki precepts are just for today. It's all about being in the moment. It's all about mindfulness. So the core part of Reiki is about mindfulness. It's about being present within the moment. So it's a very Buddhist practice. So the precepts are: just for today, I will not be angry. Just for today, I will not worry. Just for today, I will be compassionate to myself and others. Just for today, I will carry out my work honestly. And just for today, I will be humble. So those are the precepts that Reiki people live by. So every morning we sit there in meditation and we say those precepts. So before I even step through the doors of my salon, I've kind of prepared myself, my body, my mind, my spirit to be mindful and to keep my feet on the floor and remember that when, when people are telling me things that are very personal and traumatic sometimes, I just have to remember to ground, keep my feet on the floor, and remember those precepts that this is not about me. It's never about me. This is about the people that I'm interacting with on a daily basis.
They're really powerful. Actually, I felt really quite emotional when you were reading those out. There's something really, really beautiful in there. And just thinking about how some of those words you're talking about really resonate again with our work and awakening. And in another podcast we've done, we were thinking a lot about opening up, weren't we? And how there are so many parallels in what you're talking about and how we work, and with the grounding and the at the end of the day, that really important part of the letting go and the release. And another word that you've used, but it's just been really kind of present in the way you've been talking again, is kind of flow, and this image of the river flowing. And this is an image that we've used a lot in Hand to Health. There's this river flowing, and how
Spaces of holding.
yeah, exactly. Just really kind of resonating so much with what you're saying.
Also, it's reminding me of the being in the moment, the phenomenological response.
Yeah.
Got it right, amazing. Phenomenological. Um, um, which is something we learned when we were training, and something I personally use a lot in practice,
Yeah.
and that's sitting with the client and just being okay with the not knowing and whatever arises in the field as you're there. And that sounds like your practice as well, Shelwin, being able to sit there. And there was a shift, I think, when I first started training to being a year or so in practice, or maybe not even that much, but where I genuinely, when someone new was going to come into the practice, or someone that I knew could bring potentially a lot of anger or a lot of distress or a lot of trauma, really knowing internally somewhere that I was going to be okay, and it's okay, and I can handle what's going to walk through that door, and being out that kind of grounding that happens in yourself as a practitioner, I think can really help hold then that space for the other. And when that goes wrong, or when someone is, or when there's parts of myself, because that's also something that happens, I think, often as you get the clients of the stuff you need to work on, um, come and sit down. So I think when even someone like that comes in and you think, oh, this is interesting, this is part of my story as well, this is something I'm going to have to go away with, that you're able to go, but that's okay, I can still sit with them, and I've acknowledged that in me, and I'm going to pop that there, and then I'm going to make sure I go and talk about that in supervision, or talk about that maybe in your Reiki circles, or something. But this real phenomenological response, this real as it comes, being with in the moment, and what does that look like? And we're very lucky, I think, that we also do that with the arts, and that's sometimes where we can really have that central objective element to our work, where both of us are looking at this thing that they're creating phenomenologically, or in the moment, about their feelings. And I wondered whether we could talk a little bit about that art process, even though I said a lot there, so someone else.
Well, I think again, talking about the whole mirror thing, when you're sat in front of somebody and you
Yeah.
kind of, it's that flow, isn't it? That
Yeah.
they feel they must come to you for a reason, because they feel comfortable, because you have maybe experienced those things yourself. But yeah, I mean, talking about Reiki in a creative sense, I think we sort of touched on this before we came on, that again, it all merges together. I think it's all a oneness, isn't it? And I think energy it is a oneness. We all experience it in so many different ways. I was talking about I love doing art as well. So art is a great outlet for me. So that's another way that I can process and get rid of things that no longer serve me, that I don't need. But with Reiki, the great thing about Reiki is that it's everything and anywhere and all of the time. So you can actually imbue Reiki into anything. So Reiki can be imbued into the paints that you use. Reiki can be imbued in the water that you clean your brushes with. It's all about intention. And again, that's another big thing in Reiki. Intention is key. Before you start any healing process, you have to, your intention has to be completely for the good of that person. So, if I was doing a piece of artwork, if I was feeling uninspired, I would bring that Reiki energy in and sit with it for a minute and just ask for the Reiki to show me some inspiration, give me some guidance. Where do I need to start? And it's that moment of picking up the paintbrush and putting it to the paper or the canvas, and just allowing it to flow, and see what comes up. And some of my best artwork has been through using Reiki as a tool to inspire what needs to come out from me.
I think as art therapists, I was just thinking as you're talking there, Shelwin, that we sort of hold that space in order for that to emerge and evolve for the client. I think is that actually, because in art psychotherapy, it isn't about an end product; it is about the creative process.
Yeah.
And it is that often, or where do I start? And it's about, well, you maybe just with a material or a color or a size of paper, or there isn't, so, and how we hold that space in order for the client to be able to just notice what it is, I guess, in a way. When I'm thinking about, you're talking about energy, and I'm thinking about my hands sort of move, and I was wondering about the energy that's connected with that in terms of the mobilizing of yourself, and going into some sort of a movement or going to reach for a particular art material, and how that actually is the unknown, like you're talking about, is the unknown is the energy, and how our body responds to that in movement. And how then as art psychotherapists we hold that space in order for that to work through with the client. And I'm really enjoying listening to you, because like Sarah Jane is saying, there are so many parallels in terms of the work that you do, that I'm noticing maybe in just in different formats, if you like. But actually it is all the same, sort of the flow is still all happening there.
Yeah.
It's just in different words, different language, different format, but I am really noticing all of those parallels. Yeah.
I mean, in practices like yoga or qigong or tai chi, and that it's all about movement, and it's all about flow, and it's all about shifting energy to create a better understanding of how our bodies work. And like I said before about with the river, if there are blockages within your body, it, the whole point of Reiki is to be able to remove those blockages, to allow the body to flow better, so that energy can flow better into the body, so that we can work more effectively, so we can move. If something's blocking a part of your body, you can't move it. So once you release that energy starts to flow through, and it makes you feel so much better. There is sometimes when I'm working with a client and I don't even touch them, because they're not ready for that. So again, like with your job, with some clients, sometimes you've just got to sit in silence. It's intuitively feeling the energy, and taking a moment to just be quiet and see what's coming up. We tend to talk too much, and we tend to try and fix things quickly. We feel uncomfortable when things aren't right. So to combat that, we'll talk too much, or we'll try and fix it, or we need to touch people. And Reiki is about just taking that moment to just take a step back and just be silent. Let's just listen. listen to what's happening. Listen to that energy. You know, energy is not just, you can't see it, but you feel it and you can hear it, right? So it's taking that moment to be quiet, I think.
I think, and that is around sometimes our want to be able to fill up space. Or
Absolutely.
it's about creating more space to notice what then will emerge. Yeah.
Again, it's creating that space for that person, you know, and it is just about that person in that moment. Going back to Reiki being a very mindfulness practice, you know, it's just for today, just in this moment. You're not thinking about anything else. You are just in this moment for that person. And that's what I love about Reiki. It's a real, it's a practice where you know, all the ego is gone and it's got nothing to do with you. This is just about this energy that you're pulling through and working with another person to help them work more effectively through their lives. And it's just such a beautiful thing to be able to be part of, that I just do feel so appreciative and blessed every day that I've had the chance to be able to work and do this. You know, it's such a love-based practice as well. You know, like I say, compassion is one of the biggest things that I've learned from doing this practice. You know, in a world that we live in right now, I think that's so important that we practice compassion, you know, for our, not just for others, but also for ourselves.
I really like the way, Shelwin, to hear your perspective on the way that we work. And I'm thinking from my practice, where often I will work alongside my clients. So, for example, if they're working with clay, I'll have a bit of clay, and we might well be in silence, or might be painting that, and then it's really then we'll come to a moment where we rest, and then we'll, you know, obviously look at, you know, not mine, but we'll look at the client's you know, process. And often I have found that in that space of that silence, that something I'm picking up with the client, and it emerges in my work. So it might be that I've made the same object or painted the same thing or done a similar scene. It might actually be the complete polar opposite, that actually what they are wanting to express or difficult to express, maybe that's what I'm holding that. So I really get to learn a lot more about my client from my creative process working alongside. And I hold that. That's something for me to hold and to be aware of. So I'm just wondering how, so hearing, you know, your perspective from a Reiki point of view, when you hear that, how does that sound? Is that something that sounds familiar to you when you're working alongside?
Yeah, I mean, when you're channeling energy through for someone, you know, the process of actually working on somebody, you know, the energy comes from my hands. So it's a touch therapy, but also, you know, thinking about working safely with people, making it a safe space. Sometimes people don't want to be touched. But as I'm working with the person, that you know, that energy's flowing through and you're being guided to where that energy needs to go. So that's how it works for me. It's being guided. And at the end of the session, you know, I kind of bring them back round and we'll sit there and I just won't say anything for a little bit and just let them come out with how it felt for them, but let them process what's just happened, let them embody the Reiki energy that they've just had. But then I will say to them, you know, this is how I felt through your healing. These are the things that came up for me. Does that mean anything to you? You know, how does that make you feel? And that then sets up a dialogue for them to be able to sort of go, oh my gosh, yeah, that is what I'm feeling. That connection, it makes them feel connected in that moment, that, you know, that something actually has happened, you know, something has processed or shared or moved along, you know, it becomes personal for them and it feels like the healing has been happening. It's about giving them a voice, you know, and allowing them to feel comfortable enough to share the things that are going on within their body and give them compassion for themselves, give them confidence that we're all going through this stuff, and this is just a great way for you to be able, because Reiki is, the importance of Reiki is when we feel balanced and flowing, we're calm, we're centered, we're healthy, we feel great. And when we're blocked and low, we feel emotionally off, we're unwell. So just giving that person that moment to take control of their own healing. I think that is what I love about this practice, is that, I'm not a magician. I'm not going, creating a spell and going, there, you're healed. This is all about holding someone's hand in a gentle way. And sometimes it can be rocky and it can be horrible and it can be, it's not all love, light and laughter. It's not like that. Dealing with the trauma and getting rid of things in the body can be quite traumatic. So holding that space is really, really, really important, and making that person feel confident enough that they are in a safe enough space that they can do that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about your own moment of meeting, Shelwin, when you had this invitation from somebody who comes into your salon and recognizes you as a healer, and I'm wondering, when that happens for you, maybe when you have somebody who's in your salon or that you meet in life and you have this connection with their energy and recognize something for them that maybe they're completely unaware of, and what's that like, and how do you kind of approach that?
Well, I think from a child, I've always been that kooky kind of weird kid. And actually, I was kind of having a conversation about this the other day with a client, and we were talking about star signs and how, sometimes you always connect, you always sort of have one particular type of person that you're connected to, or you're sent, they always kind of attach themselves to you. And I feel like that within my role in the salon, the clients that walk through the door generally have that interest, they're that kind of person. So immediately there's that connection, and I just feel like these people are being sent to me from the universe, because it's the sort of, my salon is a very holistic salon. It's a space that I've imbued with that kind of energy. I make that salon a space where people feel comfortable. So I feel like I'm sent those kinds of people. And the people that aren't necessarily aware of holistic therapies or spirituality or enlightenment or anything like that, when they sit in the chair, they just kind of immediately deflate a little and, it's nice, isn't it? and we can open up that dialogue. But yeah, I think I see it in everybody. Like I say, I don't think anyone is special. Everybody has the ability for healing. It's just recognizing that connection and being open to it. And I like Ellie was saying, as a hairdresser, we are talking to people constantly and taking on a lot of their trauma. They talk about their deepest, darkest secrets, and it's a lot for a hairdresser to take on. And I've actually just opened up a Reiki school, because I think it's really important for anybody in a client-facing environment, and a talking environment, to be able to have that practice for themselves, to be able to go home and be able to, if you've had a day where you've had quite a heavy day, to be able to do a bit of self-healing. And so that's something that I'm really sort of working towards, is I want to get as many people doing Reiki as possible. If the whole world did Reiki, it would be a great world. But that's something.
That sounds like a really good public health message in a way, because
it should be.
Are, sort of, we think about distress and dis-ease, and and that's something that really would be beneficial.
Maybe we can pop your link below this so people can come through and get in touch if they're interested as well, because
Yeah, that'd be
I
great.
definitely know, well, as I said, I only had a meeting last week, funny enough, with with some hairdressers in that sense. And just as you're talking, Shelwin, the way you describe your practice is so similar to, I think, how we would describe ours, the space and the giving people the power to be able to, or the tools to be able to heal themselves, to take away. I always say to my clients, the point of this is that it stops. The point of this therapy is that it doesn't go on for the rest of your life. The point is that you feel comfortable enough and grounded enough and have processed what you want to, so you can, leave our practice, which is sometimes a sad day, but one that's so necessary in people taking on their own ability, energy, power. So is absolutely beautiful. I'm so aware that we could probably talk for another hour, and we've already spoken for a good 40 minutes, but I didn't know whether you guys had any questions before we maybe close up and move on.
I was just thinking, I mean, this, could lead to so many much bigger, broader conversations, absolutely for sure. But I'm thinking around, that kind of sense of agency that, both yourself and Ellie were talking about. And that empowerment in a world, particularly right now, where a lot of people, we feel so disempowered that actually we feel like we're being done to, and finding ways that, yes, well, actually we do have our own, we have got element of control, we have got some sense of agency, and just knowing where that we can use that for our own benefits. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
I
I
think
think about empowerment there is something that, so within Reiki we empower the Reiki energy constantly to make, to help it grow and to really feel that in our bodies, and we call that blessings. It's a spiritual blessing to empower your body with that lovely energy. So we do that on a very regular basis.
Beautiful putting it.
Yeah, really beautiful. For final comments, Shelwin, how would you anything you'd like to leave with our listeners, or any tips about living like this?
Um, I think it's just taking a moment and just, at one, if you can just take 5 minutes in your day to just sit, just feel your body, return back into your body, feel your feet on the floor, connect back in to the ground, and feel connected back to nature again. And it's just taking a moment to breathe, right? We don't breathe enough because we're so busy. Our lives are so busy. There's so much going on. There's so much that we're exposed to on a daily basis that we forget to just breathe. And I think, if anything, Reiki has taught me is mindfulness, and just to be at one with yourself and stop and take a moment and breathe. So if I can give you anything from today, it would be, yeah, just take 5 minutes, just sit, connect back to the earth, and just take a breath.
Beautiful, so needed. Thank you. And thank you guys for listening, and please comment below or anything about what more you may want to hear, or maybe we want to hear from Shelwin again. I feel like I want to.
I definitely I echo that actually. Just you mentioning the Reiki school has opened a door of questions for me. So yeah, love to have you back if you'd be happy, Shelwin, at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to come back and talk more about that. Maybe do a little bit of meditation with you.
Wouldn't that be great?
I was thinking about body scans and things like that, and where we take, clients doing that before they even do start their art, just kind of go within. So maybe that would be beautiful. Yeah, do it together online. That'd be lovely. Yeah. Well, thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you.